Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. As always, it is Nick here, back with your daily crypto news and analysis. And today, we're going to be talking about Ripple and XRP, so let's just dive in. And let's start off with this tweet here. 3 US congressmen introduced gold standard bill to stabilize the US dollar's value. Now, what's crazy about this is that I've been talking about the possibility of this gold-backed system built around SDRs, CBDCs, etc. I do think that that is where this is basically headed, but within this bill, it basically said to avoid CBDCs. So this is very interesting, but I do think that we are going to see a point in time where gold possibly does get revalued and we possibly try again at the gold standard. But we do see over here from Mr. Man XRP, to define the dollar as a fixed weight of gold and for other purposes. Look at this. 3 congressmen introduced gold standard bill to stabilize the dollar's value. Now, again, as we do look at what's happening around banks, around inflation, around the US dollar as a whole, it is very, very interesting to say the least what's happening around the US economy. And now we are starting to see bills like this being introduced. It's kind of comical because, again, we've been focused on the evolution of what's going to happen. Like, what is the US going to do? Are they going to turn to crypto? Are they going to turn to, gold, silver, whatever? This is also why I've said, like, we need to stockpile a ton of physical gold, silver, and also we need to stockpile crypto. In my opinion, if we do go back to a gold-backed system, the inefficiencies that essentially caused us to ditch the gold-backed system could be solved through crypto. Look at tokenization, right? If we have gold revalued, because the main issue with the gold-backed system was there wasn't enough gold, but if we revalue it and fractionalize it, well, guess what? There's enough gold. The system is deflationary. This would work. And I do think that crypto would be the core infrastructure for that. It's very interesting what's happening right now around the US. And by the way, the dollar was very, very close. I'm telling you right now, if we lose this level that we just recently came down to, which was also the level going all the way back to May of 2022, this is going to be a significant alert that, guess what? Risk on assets are about to go crazy. Because I do think that we will retest the 200 weekly EMA. And if we do retest this and lose it, that is extremely bullish for crypto as well as stocks. But the question is, where will the US dollar head to? And I do think that we will continue to see this trail down. I don't believe that there's going to be life in the US dollar going forward on in time. And I will get to the point of that by the end of this video. But I do want to start off with this tweet here as well. So we do see top Saudi Iranian diplomats to meet in China. Era of US involvement in region is over. We have been reporting on this. Saudi Arabia is the last thread holding the US dollar to any sort of value. Without Saudi Arabia, there is zero value tied to the US. Now, mind you, we have been talking about this for a little bit of time, and we have started to see conflicts brewing between Saudi Arabia and also the US. And it's crazy because we constantly push and push and push when in all actuality, we need Saudi Arabia more than Saudi Arabia needs us. They are already meeting and creating trade deals with major BRICS nations, while what is the US doing? Well, we're pushing them away. It's insane, especially at a time where the US dollar is, if you go back to the topping point up here, to the price today, it's down 11%. It is down 11% in the span of 189 days. Now, you also might be saying, well, it's still up technically. And yeah, if you go off of the lows back here, this thing is up. It's up about 14%. But guess what? I do assume that we will lose the 200 weekly EMA. I believe that we will retest a significant level of interest. This could possibly drop 16, 17, even 20+%. I mean, if we come back down to test that demand zone, that's 22% almost. But there's also other levels that we've been looking at and watching closely. I believe that within the next coming days, weeks, and even months ahead, a lot of things are going to brew and the catalysts are going to shine that will create the US dollar spiral. And I don't want to say death spiral because, again, that's like extreme marketing terms, but it will spiral out of control to the downside. Very similar to 2008, very similar to, previous times as well. I'm watching this very closely, and this, in my opinion, is the last thread. It's the last thread holding anything together for the US. Now, I also want to share with you guys this. France to go against the US wishes will engage with China over Ukraine issue. Listen closely to this.
Talking directly to China about this conflict, the Russian aggression, what is at stake, the consequences for our Europe, the consequences for the Near East and Middle East, as well as for the African continent and so many others, it means to try and engage them in a strategic relationship that may be more complex than what we would like. This is what I will discuss. You already understood that. Tomorrow, in the day with the president, we will try to build, in a way, engage China toward a shared responsibility for peace and stability.
And again, we recently reported on France moving away from the US. Remember? With the liquefied natural gas deal that they just recently did, yeah, they are cutting out the US. I have been closely watching the events unfold around the US dollar. And I've been warning everyone around this. And the craziest thing about all of this is that there is individuals in disbelief that this was actually a reality, saying that the US will never lose its reserve currency status, that the US is not going to fall behind. I'm telling you right now, they already have. Events have unfolded within the last 2 weeks alone that solidifies the US losing extreme dominance within global trade. Now, also, we do see over here, BRICS nation announced plans to develop a new currency. Listen closely.
The United States dollar under threat? Well, the U.S. dollar became the backbone of the global economy after World War II because of America's robust economy, its democracy, and its transparent regulatory systems, which made the nation seem like a safe place for international investors. But now the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have announced plans to develop a new currency. Their goal is to reduce reliance on the U.S. dollar and other Western currencies as well, and protect themselves from international pressure. In fact, Brazil and China have already struck a deal to bypass the dollar when paying for trade goods, which is a major milestone in Beijing's long-term plans to establish its own currency, the yuan, as the dominant international currency. So, what will this new currency look like, and what will it mean for the dollar? Well, joining us now is Professor John Quelch from the Miami Herbert Business School at the University of Miami. So the BRICS nations aren't a formal trade bloc. So if they do, in fact, create this new currency, how will it ultimately be used?
So I think what we'd find is that it would initially be used in very large transactions that are government-style transactions between two or more of the countries involved. Just to give a little bit of background here, it is the case that the US dollar has a role that is outsized relative to the 24% of world GDP that the US commands. So the US dollar is involved in almost 90% of all international trade settlements, and around about 60% of foreign currency reserves around the world held by central banks are held in US dollars. So the BRICS nations combined, their GDP is around about 25% of world GDP, vis-a-vis the US now at 24%. And so it's not surprising that these nations collectively are saying, hey, wait a minute, why should our macroeconomic policies and exchange rates be at the mercy of US dollar Federal Reserve?
And basically, he just goes on to mention the fact that the Federal Reserve is basically weaponizing the US dollar. And these nations, I mean, what we see around these nations' economies is dictated by the events and what the US actually does with the US dollar. And in the last couple years, and even going back many, many years, I mean, we're talking decades, the US has done a terrible job at dictating the world economy by utilizing the US dollar to do so. The US dollar as a reserve currency only hurts these other nations by the US acting in idiotic ways in terms of monetary policy. And that's exactly what has happened. And that's what led to these events occurring in history. And when we go over here, we do see Justin, former President Trump, says China will probably displace the US dollar as #1 currency in the world. And yeah, this just got reported on. We do see China is trying to displace the US dollar as the #1 currency throughout the world. Unthinkable 3 years ago. If this happens, and under Biden's leadership, it probably will, this would be the biggest defeat for our country in its history. We will be reduced to second-tier status. Amazing. Make America great again. Now, obviously, listen, I'm not sitting here, spewing politics. In fact, I think that politics is just another way to divide individuals. And it has worked for years and years and years and decades as well. I just don't care for politics, to be completely honest with you guys. I think there's a much larger show at hand. I think that a lot of these major names that are in government and in specific positions as well in government, I think that they're all being played by a much larger hand. But again, this is the truth though. We are starting to see China become a leader, but we're seeing the BRICS themselves become a much larger leader. You got to realize that what we are seeing before our eyes is essentially the US losing the first tier status and becoming second tier. And when this happens, it is going to change history forever. Everything will change in an instant. Now, over here, we do see Senator Ron Johnson to Janet Yellen. Listen to how crazy this is. You are going to drive the debt to $50 trillion. Question mark. It's a question. Yellen, yes, but listen closely to this.
You're going to drive the debt from somewhere around $32 trillion up to about $50 trillion, correct?
Yes, but
this was March 16th.
What I believe is the single most important metric for judging the fiscal stance of the country is real net interest as a share of GDP.
Okay.
We have
so are you concerned when
GDP.
you're taking the debt from $32 to $50 trillion? Are you concerned who's going to buy that debt, and also at what rate they'll expect to be compensated for buying riskier and riskier debt? Are you concerned about that?
Well, if the real net interest cost of the debt remains low relative to GDP, and we're on a sustainable fiscal.
Well, we're not on a sustainable path.
This is exactly why we are in the position we are today. This is exactly why we are seeing the events unfolding today. It's the idea that we push sustainability. Let me put this into perspective. $30+ trillion worth of debt. Tell me where the sustainability is. This is not even remotely sustainable. Interest on the debt is approaching 20% of tax revenue. Keeping this going, and it will be at 30% plus of all tax revenue, we are borrowing more just to pay interest on the old debt. This is not how sustainability is built. This is not how sustainability is defined. And going forward on in time, if we're going to get to that $50 trillion level, which I assume that we will, I assume that we will raise the debt ceiling and we will print ourselves into oblivion. Guess what? Things are going to change rapidly. Like I said, in an instant, in the snap of a finger, the US will fall greatly behind, and what we have seen for nearly a century will disappear before our eyes. And that is the US losing its reserve currency status, becoming second tier, and what we will see in the US will be all-out chaos. I'm not here to fearmonger. I'm not here to sit here and say, hey, you know, this is what's going to happen because I believe, no. Go back to 2008. Look at what happened in 2008. What we are seeing today is not even relative to what we seen in 2008. This is much larger. And guess what? We are not out of the woods yet on the banking crisis. We just seen JP Morgan, CEO, says the banking crisis is not over and there will be repercussions from it for years to come. Guess what? This banking crisis, if they want to call it that, it is only going to ignite more and more. We are going to start to see a much larger collapse of the financial system. What we recently seen was just a warning sign of what's to come. Remember, 2008, it started to trickle, and then all at once, boom, everything. Just wait. Things aren't even close to bad yet. We do see over here Bitcoin on-ramps, crypto, not Bitcoin. I hate the idea of just mentioning Bitcoin. I'm just going to say crypto. Crypto on-ramps and off-ramps continue to close. The feds are not done yet. More exchanges will fall. P2P circular economies are more important than ever. Get paid in crypto and pay others in crypto. Focus on local businesses. This is the way. Yes, this war is going to be rampant on crypto. We're going to start to see more and more exchanges being cut off. We are at a point in time where the global economy is weakening. I've talked about XRP, right? XRP could save a lot of what's happening right now. But guess what? They don't want to embrace technology. They want to continue to fight back against this technology. But guess what? Outside of the US, we are going to start to see an evolution like no other. And what's going to happen is something that has not happened in over a century. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Because definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord down in the description below. As always, hope that you all have a beautiful day or a beautiful night wherever you guys are in this beautiful world. This has been Nick. Peace out, guys.